So today we're going to talk about mean kinship. So if we just remember, kinship means how closely or distantly related an organism is to another one. So after reading this first little paragraph here, you're going to answer these couple of questions. So what situations would occur in a population that could cause the mean kinship number to change yearly? So think about zoos and think about animals that you would keep in cages, wouldn't keep in cages, different enclosures, different breeding seasons. Try to think of different things like that with the background that you have from last time as well. If we look down at the modified pedigree down below, we have our Humboldt penguin pedigree chart right here, and I still am not good at circling things. I don't know. You know what? It's going to be okay. All right, so here we have the first generation, so these would be like the grandparents. So let's put a G there. These would be parents, and these down here would be the grandchildren. The little grandchildren penguins. That's you guys. So if we just kind of like read through this paragraph here, kinship is one of the best conservation methods available. It surpasses old practices of avoidance when it comes to inbreeding strategies because we don't want inbreeding. So, though the mean kinship of an individual does not indicate the number of offspring the animal should have, at least it's cleared which animals should be used. So, as in which ones should we actually use for breeding. So, if we're looking at this, if you go all the way down below here, it says higher mean kinship numbers means that the individual is more related to everybody else. So down here at the bottom, we have our mean kinship. So penguin A is a 174, penguin B is a 183, penguin C is a 125, and penguin D is a 116. And those are all decimals. So it's 0.174, 0.183, and so on. So it's like 17% related to everybody else, 18%. Kind of think of it like that, okay? So if we scroll down on our page a little bit, it says using the Humboldt penguin pedigree chart, which of the grandchildren would be most likely chosen to breed that year. So looking at these and looking at those kinship numbers, get my little pen out. So we have some different kinship numbers. So basically, which two penguins would you breed together? We can also look back at their pedigrees where we can see that this whole section is completely separate. So maybe these original grandparent penguins came from a different zoo or a different breeding program or anything like that. We can also see over here, so we have our male and our female, and then we can see here that this organism mated with one of its kids, which happens sometimes in zoos, to make this one. So this penguin is going to be slightly more inbred, okay? These two right here, so let me get a different color. So this one's parents are siblings. So this penguin is like from Tennessee. Just kidding. So that penguin there, its parents are siblings. And we can see that in the number because that one has a 0.183 kinship. And this penguin right here, the one that I circled in blue, whose grandparent and parent were related to each other, has a 174. Okay, so those are pretty high numbers compared to those other ones. So we can start to look at those patterns to see which ones we would actually want to use for our breeding program. Okay, so you can answer those questions down there, looking at that pedigree, looking at those family relationships. And down here at the bottom, we have a mean kinship value penguin match chart. So you get to be the bachelorette matchmaker for the penguins. So think about it like that, very exciting. You just to decide which one gets the rose. Hey, very exciting stuff, guys. So in zoos, they need to decide which penguins they're actually going to breed. So here we have the parents and making the kids, parents making the kids. So here, when similar MK values, I know this is really small, but you guys can kind of like zoom in on your screens. When we have similar MK values that breed, this is what happens to their numbers. So if we have a 0.107 breeding with a 0.107, basically their numbers get multiplied together, okay? When we have different values, penguins, so we have a 0.161 and a 0.064, that number is going to be somewhere in the middle, okay? So we can kind of estimate what our mean kinship values are going to be for our animals. So down here at the bottom, you guys can answer the questions here. So breeding two penguins with similar MK values, like in the top group, will result in which one of the following? If we breed two penguins with different MK values, what is going to be their value? And then finally, down at the bottom, so does this look a good breeding program? And you are going to figure that out. You're going to figure that out by looking at how these organisms are related. So each of these have four, they're called founders. Those are like original penguins that we have in our populations. We have males and females, M and F. And then each one of them has something that we call a stud number. So whenever we're breeding animals, it's actually something called husbandry. And within husbandry, we have stud animals. So those are animals that we use in our breeding programs. And we can look at and try to figure out our mean kinship values and then explain what you think the kinship value of that grandchild is going to be. Um, Down here at the bottom are the calculations for actually figuring these numbers out. So up here along the top, we have our founders. So if founder one would breed with um, like 1 and 1 together. I'm sorry, not 1 and 1. They can't cross fertilize. So if we have 1 and 2, they're not related to each other. So that's going to be a 0 kinship. Okay. So then we're going to go along and we are going to figure those out for all the kids. So if we scroll up on the screen here, we have 11M and 12F. So if we go down, so if we have 11 breeding with 12, that's going to be a 0.25 kinship value. So they're 25% related to each other. So just follow this chart to kind of answer the questions up on top. And if you need any help on this, please feel free to email me.